Welcome to Sit Around the Fire, the podcast dedicated to the men and women on the front lines, first responders, military personnel, and their families. I'm your host, Ashley Dillard, and together we'll explore the challenges, the triumphs, and the real stories behind the uniform. In each episode, we'll talk about mental health, wellness, and the unique culture that comes along with serving in a high-stress environment. From building strong relationships to navigating the weight of the job, this is a space where we can be real, share experiences, and support one another. Whether you're on the front lines yourself or you're supporting someone who is, this is a podcast to remind you that you are not alone. So grab a seat, pull up to the fire, and let's get into it. Okay, we're live. So, Mr. Major, welcome to Sit Around the Fire, the podcast for first responders and the people who support them. And I have to say, today feels a lot like Christmas continued because we've been talking about this for a long time, and now we're here and it's happening. So it feels very cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So welcome in. I want to take a few minutes to just kind of give everybody an overview of who you are, where you've come from, kind of a little piece of what your story looks like, and then we'll get in a little further. So,
All right. So yeah, I am Michael Major. I retired from Longmont Fire after 23 years last October. So it's been about a year, and I guess that'd be about a month that I've been retired. But I was there for 23 years. Started in 2000, got my paramedic in 2006, and then became a lieutenant about, I think, 2014. So in that time, I was also working part-time in Aurora on rural metro ambulance. So I was doing 911 calls with Aurora. I also worked part-time in Elizabeth Fire doing some rural medicine where driving emergent to a level 1 trauma center was 30 minutes away. And I also spent 5 years on the SWAT team while I was at the fire department. So that combined with married for 33 years, raising 4 children, having 2 granddaughters, and just the challenges of normal life, what people would call normal life, what I would call outside of work life. So it's no mystery that with the 23 years of working as a paramedic, as an EMT, as a firefighter, private ambulance, rural medicine, being a lieutenant comes with a lot of stressors.
mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you combine that with personal life, the challenges of marriage and family and the ups and downs. And then being 60 years old, you're also experiencing losses in your personal life. Parents are dying off, and in-laws, mother-in-law, father-in-law, both parents. You can add siblings. I've lost 2 siblings. So I did come from a very close family growing up. I was born in Joliet, Illinois. So we have what you would call traditional family structure, where it's not uncommon to have 6 kids. So I'm the youngest of 6 kids. And I remember one of the happiest moments of my life is when all 6 of us lived together. I had my parents and my grandmother. So that's what, 9 people
Wow.
living in a small house.
Yeah.
And I was extremely happy because I didn't know that that was not normal. So I grew up in a very tight family, very, very close. So the good and the bad of that is you grow up in a close family, but then when you have a loss, it's so much deeper, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And as you know, as first responders, we're kind of trained to not really face emotions and feelings head on. We're taught from day one that if you allow yourself to feel, you won't survive in the profession.
Mm-hmm.
And there are actually comments from older uh, employees that will say, if you have emotions, if you take things on, you're not cut out for the job.
Mm-hmm.
So then that adds another stressor. So, like I said, growing up in a very tight family, having those traditional Midwestern, I guess you could call them values, and then having a career that deals with loss and learning the fragility of life, seeing the everyday stressors, seeing how someone's life changes in an instant, seeing things that, like you said in your last podcast, that you shouldn't see, but you do and you repress it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say my biggest challenge was probably that on the job for 23 years, and I got a lot of reps. I got a lot of reps in those 23 years. And I would say my biggest challenge was it took so much to deal with all of that, with the repression and the avoidance and the mental trauma, that when I would come home or when I'd be off duty, any little request was magnified, because now you're just giving, giving of yourself, giving of yourself, giving of yourself, neglecting yourself, giving of yourself, neglecting yourself. And then when you're off, which you never are,
Mm-hmm.
then you come home and every little request is so magnified.
Right.
It's so it's funny because in your last episode, you talked about how you go around and say, well, I don't think about that, or it doesn't bother me. The job doesn't bother, this doesn't bother me, or that doesn't bother me. And then you give the symptoms, you're like, wait a minute, I have every one of those symptoms. I have a deep need and desire to isolate, or I have this burning anger that just never, ever subsides.
Right.
Or I have this loneliness feeling or this emptiness feeling. And I got to the point where every single morning, it was easier on the days that I had to work because my alarm would go off. I'd roll out of bed like a robot, hit the snooze, go to the bathroom, grab my coffee, grab my stuff, go out the door, boom. But on the days where I didn't have to get up, I would lie there for 30, 40 minutes trying to figure out a reason to get up. And obviously, I always came up with a reason because I'm sitting here. But I would have every morning. I would go through this process of why bother? Why should I get up? And then every now and then, I'd have a reason. Say maybe the grandchildren would pop into my head, or my legacy. Is this how you want to go out? Really? Or things, whatever it was. But it
Yeah.
was always something. But I would force myself to get up. And I would always think of the rocket ship, that when it blasts off, how much force it takes for it to lift off and go up into gravity. And I always felt like that, getting out of bed.
Mm.
Like I'm just fighting through this force just to get up and get moving. And I was listening to a podcast one time, and the guy said, the worst feeling you could ever have is feeling overwhelmed. And that resonated with me, because I think when you're that overwhelmed, your brain is so full. You mentioned the bucket last time, and I used to walk around the firehouse saying, they're like, Major, are you really leaving? And I would say over and over, my bucket's full. My bucket is full. There's no emptying it out. I could have something where maybe you could take a ladle of water out, but it's overflowing. It's full. And once it's full, you have to do something.
Right.
And continuing doing what you're doing is not the way to empty your bucket.
No. Plan A
So,
harder does not work.
no. So so when your bucket is full and your mind, so your mind is full and then it's closed off and it's full of all this crap. And when it's full and it's full of all this crap, you can't take on new information. You can have, you, in my opinion, you can go to traditional therapy. People, you can talk and talk and talk, but if your mind is full of crap, it cannot take on any new information. Mm-hmm. So that's where I like the idea of psychedelic therapy, what we call CAP, right? The ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. Mm-hmm. Because in my personal experience, the ketamine was you call it the control alt delete. It was like a timeout, a second chance, stop. Hey, just pump the brakes, empty out your brain, clear everything out. And now it's open and available to take on new information.
Yeah.
Or where you can actually see inside of it.
Right. So I'm curious, like I want to dive into that part here in a second, but I'm curious to kind of go back and touch on a couple of things that you talked or spoke to. And first off, I'm curious to know, or if you can provide some insight into, because I tell people this all the time, is that we didn't just get here overnight. Like we don't just suddenly wake up one day and then find ourselves struggling to even get out of bed. Usually, right. I mean,
right.
There are the off cases, but what did you notice about this gradual movement in towards this overwhelmed, shut down type feeling? Because I would imagine starting out in your career, you were the starry-eyed, like, this is amazing. I'm a hero. Every call feels super exciting and exhilarating. Right. But how did you notice this show up for you in the way that this really did progress? Hey guys, thanks for taking the time to sit down and listen to the podcast. Whether you're actually sitting and watching or you're driving or multitasking, whatever you do, it's super awesome that we can connect with you around the fire. If you want to get further connected into the community that we talk a lot about here, I invite you to check out the link in the show notes below. It'll give you an opportunity to stay connected and at the forefront of all the communication happening. I'm going to send you something special to start working on your nervous system today, so keep an eye on your inbox. And now, back to the show.
Yeah, and I would say, I don't want to really say that the type of calls changed. I don't know if they changed or if I changed, but it got to the point where you're right. I used to be very excited for the tone to go off. I used to be very excited to go on the call. I was really, I had a passion. And then over time, the passion started to decrease, where I started to feel like I don't care. I don't care, or it's really hard to pinpoint it because I've actually never thought about this before. Like when it started, but it was it was very subtle at first. I was like, all right, well, you just need a vacation. So you go on vacation. It's like, nah, that didn't fix it. It's like, all right, you need to change stations or crews or whatever, or get into something else. Nah, that didn't fix it. So it started to become unfixable. So over time, I just started losing passion and compassion and empathy. And then every day would just start to wear on me a little more and a little more. Because at first I was like, I can handle it, I can shake it off. But then it started to wear on me. So I went from like 10% to 30%. And then I was like 50%. And then I was like, all right, this is getting pretty heavy, pretty burdensome. and then you start feeling the dread. And then you're like, where's this dread coming from? What is going on? And then you can't turn it off. So it's one thing to maybe feel this way while you're on duty, but then you come home and you drive home and you get this overwhelming fatigue and this heaviness. And then every little thing is a chore. And now you're just bombarded. So it's like from work to work, right, and no break. You're just constantly bombarded. And as you know, now your physiology is going to be affected by that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have this high level of cortisol 24/7. So now you're getting sick more, or you're feeling this brain fog, and then but I would just say over time it was just gradual and gradual and gradual. And then at some point there's a limit or a break. And I don't remember the day, I don't remember the event, but there was a day where it was like, I'm done.
Mm.
However, you can't afford to be done because you still have to provide for your family. You still have to be there for your children and your spouse. You have to be a productive member in the society. So now you're just an empty shell. So now you're just this empty shell going through the motions. You have no feeling. You have you have no compassion. You have no emotion. You have nothing, and you're just dead. My daughter said to me that I was dead inside, and I didn't argue or disagree with her.
Wow.
Because you're just this empty shell going through the motions. But you're right, it is very gradual, and you're kind of aware of it, but it comes to a point where it's overwhelming and you've reached your limit. So then you start going through the point where you're just consumed with the thoughts of death and dying. You're consumed with those who have died around you, like I lost my best friend, I lost my in-laws, I lost my parents. I watched my brother die slowly of cancer. So now you have all these things that are just bombarding you all at once. And you just so now you're just consumed with that. You're consumed with the thought of death, the thought of dying. You're thinking, would it be easier just to be dead?
Mm-hmm.
And then then once you become consumed with that, then you really see no purpose to get up in the morning, and you start to feel hopeless.
Yeah.
Like there's no way out. You have no plan. You have no game plan. You have no way out. It's hopeless and it's helpless. And you really, really need a reason to keep going.
Yeah.
But once you're full and consumed with that, you need outside help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I heard you speaking to this, the words that were coming in my head were this like sense of feeling trapped. Like,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
have to go, you have to provide, you have to show up. Like, and I think we could both agree there's a huge pressure from the organizational side as well to show up.
Absolutely.
Like you don't get to take, or very easily you don't get to take days off, or like you're required to show up more and give more and more and more all of the time. And so a very strong feeling of that trapped and, like you mentioned, helpless
Right.
or hopeless.
Right. Very much. And I think because we do talk about first responders, but obviously there are people who are going through the same thing. I think it is a little worse for first responder and or military, because if you work at you work at a company where you work a 9 to 5, and in your opinion it's not too stressful and you don't see a lot of trauma, you still have regular life to deal with. But for us, not only do we have the combination of what we see on the job plus real life, we're also trained that it's bad to deal with it. And for me, I am a Black male, and Black males do not ask for help. Black males do not go to the doctor, and 100% Black males do not seek therapy.
Mhm.
That's ingrained from childhood.
Right. Yep.
No one you knew did it, and it was taboo. It was, you don't do it. So one of my missions is to let, and it's the same with females, but Black males mostly.
Hmm.
So one of my missions is to let other Black males and females who were taught that way, or anyone in general who grew up in the Midwest with that stigma, that you can ask for help. Like Dr. Kelly said, you can be vulnerable and safe.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean XYZ if you go to therapy, if you reach out for help. You can still be strong. You can still be independent. You can still keep your black card. You can still keep your man card. It won't get revoked if you reach out and ask for help. If you reach out and ask for therapy. What's the alternative? Die of hypertension, die of diabetes, die of cancer, be shut off and shut down for the last 30 years of your life? I mean, is that better? Or for it to come out in inappropriate ways of anger and violence?
Right.
So,
well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think it's so important to talk about and bring awareness around, because with so much of this stuff, not even just the first responder culture in general, but talking from an ethnicity lens, is that like sometimes we don't like to have that conversation,
right.
or we don't like to think it is a thing. And I think it is important to bring it into the light and speak to it. But I'm curious, like, if you can, like you mentioned it earlier on as well too, of, you know, some of the older guys, or I mean, I would argue even to say like this, whatever you whatever you want to call it. I'm not even sure what the right word is to give it, indoctrination or something around like hearing, you know, people in leadership roles or around the kitchen table say, yeah, it's best to see as many dead bodies as you possibly can, or the more that you see, like the better it will be for you. I've literally heard those words
Right.
before. And I would say, like, I used to believe that. Like, I used to, because I believed that, yeah, I mean, surely the more you see it, the easier it'll get. But what do you think it is about the culture or that kind of trained response? Like, what can you provide, or what are your insights around the why? Why do you think that this is? If your love life is starting to feel like you're on a call with no backup, I've got the dispatch for you. Join us live on January 11th at 10 a.m. for a workshop where we'll teach you how to navigate the minefield of romance with the finesse of a SWAT team. What's on the agenda? We're going to talk about how to diffuse criticism, end stonewalling, through mastering the art of not just responding, but connecting, even when you feel like you're behind a wall of silence. We're going to host a live Q&A after the workshop where you can bring your relationship woes and we'll troubleshoot like you're on a scene. If you can't make it online that day, we'll record it and we'll send it right to your inbox. That way you can review everything in your own time and convenience. Don't let your personal life feel like an unmanageable scene. Gear up for a better communication by clicking in the show notes below for the link to sign up for the workshop. Remember, this isn't just about saving others, it's about saving your relationship too. Registration for the course is open now, but closes on January 4th. Don't waste time, secure your spot. Now, back to the show.
I think a lot of times, I do think that the new generation is different than the old generation. I think the old generation, and I'm a boomer, and a lot of the boomer. So I'm a boomer, so I know how boomers were raised, and boomers were raised that in order to survive, you have to be tough, and the definition of tough is to not show or have or feel emotions, and it's a survival. And to their credit, back in those days, maybe times were so tough. I mean, my dad was in World War II. I mean, there's really no time for emotions and feeling when a German is trying to kill you. I'm
Sure.
just saying.
Yeah.
And then you bring right, and then that survival technique, and then that survival those coping mechanisms and those survival tactics that he used in World War II, he brought them back to Joliet, Illinois, got married, had 6 children and passed that philosophy onto them.
Yep.
And then my grandmother, who lived with us, grew up in the Great Depression. She's the definition of tough, their definition of tough. Any weakness equals vulnerability. In order to survive, you have to be tough. Their definition of tough: no emotions, stiff upper lip, get up and do what you got to do regardless of how you feel, whatever. And then also probably because they dealt with so much loss that subconsciously maybe they never allowed people to get close to them. Because like I mentioned in the beginning, the closer you are to someone, the more pain that you're going to feel with their loss. So I think another survival technique with them, growing up in the Great Depression, World War II, you're seeing a lot of loss of people that you care for. So then all of those traditions and all of that training and all of that is passed down through the children. So now, back in, I don't know, 1970 something, you have all of these same people now are in the fire service. Now they're dealing with trauma and horrific things. And what did they learn? If you want to survive, you can't show emotion. You got to be tough. If I heard one of the firefighters told me that a call really bothered them. And I told a guy who is much older than you, he was actually older than me. And I told him that. And his response was verbatim, "Oh, well, she's not cut out for this job." That was that was it. It wasn't, "Wow, she should work through that," or, "Man, that sounds horrible," or, "Does that relate to something in her personal life that triggered something?" It was, "She's not cut out for the job." So they learned that. But I do think, just from my personal experience, I think my grandfather and my father and my uncles and my older brothers passed that down to me because they grew up in such tough times. But I do think the new generation is different. I think that they're more willing to get in touch, I guess, more willing to look inside themselves and explore their feelings more than we were.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad that you brought that up or spoke to it, because in a coming up episode, we're actually going to talk about generational trauma from that lens and how they now, I mean, you can see it from scientific research, how it literally impacts DNA of the kid, of whatever trauma that hasn't been healed or processed within both parents. It does literally impact the formation of their DNA. So you're kind of, I call it sometimes like given the gift you never asked for when it comes to, so, which we'll get into your healing journey here too. But you're not, when we do this work of healing, we're not just healing for ourselves.
Right.
We're healing for all those who have come before us that didn't have the opportunity to heal.
Right.
And you spoke to the word vulnerability, which the root word of vulnerability literally means like putting yourself out there for a risk of not being safe.
Right.
And I think if you think about, I mean, especially, gosh, in your background and your family is like, you came from the lineage of you have to do whatever you have to do to stay safe. You can't rely on other people.
No.
And so it's very much that being in a vulnerability place or expressing vulnerability puts us at risk of being hurt.
Right.
And that is something that is uncomfortable.
And surviving. If you want to survive 30 years, if you want to have a 30-year career, you can't feel emotion on every call. If you want to survive as a husband and as a man or whatever, I'm only speaking on what I know. I'm not going to speak on what it's like to be a woman. Okay. So it's not like I'm not leaving out the women, because I know they have the same trauma.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about what I know because I've lived it. But I was gonna say something. Okay, it'll come back to me. Oh, you mentioned something that I was gonna uh, touch on. Ah, okay,
Do
I'll,
you do you think like because I've often been pondering this or thinking about this is do you think this whole idea around having a 30-year career, do you think that's going to be a thing moving forward?
no way, no way. You can see that now. You can see people like, it's not for me. You can see people bailing now. I don't know. I do not think that is the. I don't think that is the going to be the standard in the future. I do not. And oh, I know what I was going to say. And so I always say balance is life's religion. If you really stop and think about a lot of things that we do and a lot of problems that we have in life, it's due to balance. We either totally shut down or we're over the top. We swing the pendulum. Everything we do is one extreme or the other. So I do think, and we've talked about protectors before, I do think that you still need a balance. Like you can't just be out there. You still have to have some of that pro- protective component to your life, but you still have to be able to process and deal with trauma.
Hmm.
But I'm trying to achieve the perfect balance of not totally shutting down to not just walking around crying all the time. you know?
Right. Yeah.
So I'm trying to balance everything we do, right? We either overeat, we undereat. It's everything we do. We live in the gym, but we never go to the gym. We're all the way left or all the way right with everything we do. That's just our culture. So balance is life's religion, and I'm trying to obtain the balance of what we're talking about.
Hmm. Yeah, you're never, I don't know if we'll ever get it fully right or we'll ever, like we're going to be in this right and wrong place, like figuring it out, I think, as we move through life. I don't think we ever really arrive, or at least I haven't.
No, well, and I hope that the new generation that we're talking about can achieve that balance where
Mhm.
where they can have a long, healthy career, but they don't have to be. Man, it's hard to say what you want to say without saying the wrong terms because all of the terms that we have learned are well, everything we've learned is wrong. So this unlearning process, because I don't want to say vulnerable, I don't want to say weak, I don't want to say it's hard to explain without using the proper terms, but I want them to have the balance of I'm able to process something in a healthy way, but I still have enough protection or protectors that I can endure all of the difficult things that I see.
Mhm.
So maybe have that balance.
Yeah, I agree. I think you do you do have to have a balance. And I think if you figured out a way or you really made that a goal to work on in your career, I think that you would show up so differently in on calls and with the people you work with and overall like you when we find ourselves in a place where we disconnect from our humanity, like we that not only impacts the people on the calls that we run, but we can see that show up like within our crews and at the stations or wherever we're working is like everybody forgets that what it's like to be a human.
Can I say that in some cases it bleeds over into your family and personal life?
Yeah.
So that's when it becomes a problem. That's when it becomes a bigger problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you don't even see it. You don't even see it sometimes till someone calls it out for you.
Right. Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, shoot."
Yeah.
Uh,
Solutions.
hmm. So um let's give the people a little bit of a dive into your specific healing journey. Like you mentioned some ketamine work that you had done, but maybe you can kind of spend some time talking to what this has looked like for you, kind of what you've gotten out of this, and talk about where you're going and that whole aspect of things.
All right. Yeah, I'm always excited to talk about it. Uh, so, PAP. So I do love that they call it ketamine-assisted psychotherapy because I like my favorite word of those three is assisted, because it's not, you always say it's not a magic pill. So it's assisting you. It's allowing you, giving you an avenue to heal.
Mm.
I work in a clinic that gives ketamine, and I had a guy come on his third visit, because they do it twice a week for the first month. His third visit, and he said, "Yeah, I did the ketamine those 2 days, and it didn't work." And I'm like, "What did you think was going to happen?" He's like, "I thought I would just take it and I would no longer be depressed." And I was like, "Oh, we need to go back to the beginning." Let me start on my journey from the beginning. So I mentioned before that I was in that state where I was overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
I could not take on new information. My brain was full. I was trapped. I was stuck. I was paralyzed. I was empty, dead, whatever. The Walking Dead. I'm at that point. And I remember when I met Dr. Kelly, and she was interviewing me to see if I would be a candidate for ketamine. And she asked me a question, and I said, "Doc, I am scared to death to do ketamine, but I'm more afraid not to do ketamine."
Mm.
I said, "I don't know what road ketamine's going to take me down, but the road that I'm currently on, I can guarantee you where that's going to take me.
Mm.
So let's try this road." So for a lot of us, you've heard the old cliches, you got to hit rock bottom, blah, blah, blah. But for a lot of us, that's true. A lot of times it's like the alcoholic that goes to AA or whatever. They have to be ready. They have to be at a point where I don't want to live like this anymore. And if it's not sincere, and if you're not ready, that's why a lot of times you relapse, right? Or a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times you just have to be ready. So for me, I was at that point. And being a spiritual person and having a praying mother, reaching out to the universe daily, I never saw this coming. I told you before, I never saw this coming. I never thought of, I don't even know if I even heard of ketamine or psychedelic therapy. And then you were at the station, you kept mentioning, I was like, "Yeah, whatever, sure, whatever. Yeah. Hey, you want to try it? Sure, whatever." Yeah. But never thinking that it was a part of my healing journey. It's just like, "Yeah, that sounds cool. I'm in. What else am I doing? Let's do this." So, so, so what I found once I did the ketamine sessions was that all of that crap, all that caca, mierda that was stuffed in my head just started emptying. And I walked around and I literally felt like my brain was changing. Like I could feel my brain changing. And I can feel the lightness and the openness of my brain. And I can just feel it. And a friend of mine said, who runs a clinic, he said, once you empty your brain and you get the neuroplasticity and you get the new neural pathways, it's up to you what you refill it with.
Yes.
So if I get this empty brain, these new neural pathways, this neuroplasticity, and I do the same old thing, I'm going to end up in the same old place.
Mm-hmm.
So I was blessed to hear that, and I was blessed to have guidance. So now my brain is empty. Now my brain is pliable, can take on new ideas, new perspectives. So now I got to fill it with something. So now you're sending me podcasts. I'm listening to every single one of them. I'm reading all of these books. I'm learning a new perspective. I'm learning. So then I listen to like I don't know, 30 or 40 podcasts, and every single one of them said, what is the key is living in the moment. I said, all right. So if you're not stressed about the future and lamenting about the past, you're living in the present. So now you're living in the present, right? So now, and you're living a life of gratitude. So that's an idea. I didn't come up with that idea. I read this idea and I said, that sounds good. Let's try it. So now when I walk outside, I don't just go outside and get the mail or go out to my truck. Now I say, oh my God, what a blessing that sun is on my face. I do not take this for granted. That cool breeze, it's blowing seeds around the world, that's pollinating and planting new life. It just feels good. I'm so grateful for this bright, wonderful, sunny day. And then when you're with your grandchildren or with your family, you're not thinking about what you got to do tomorrow, what you have to do. It's like you're living in the moment. So now my brain is empty, it's pliable, and I can take on this new idea and digest it and see the benefit of it. But that's only because of the assistance of the ketamine. And yes, I also believe in all the other psychedelics, so with the psilocybin, whatever. Obviously, those help people, but that's all I know right now.
Sure.
It's how ketamine has helped me. So now so then I'm like, okay, now how about you go through life and say, is it a blessing or is it a burden? Now every situation. So now something comes up and I get that feeling, that emotion, that tightness, that anger. It's like, wait a minute, pump the brakes. Is there a blessing in this? Or is it a burden? Just take a time out, step back. Oh yeah, I can see the blessing in this. I always use my favorite one is, and anyone who lives in Colorado can relate to this. My favorite one is stuck in a traffic jam. It's like, oh, for freak's sake, I'm stuck in a traffic jam. You know what? I have been wanting to listen to this certain podcast forever, but I just can't seem to find the time. I got the time right now. Mm-hmm. So now the burden of the traffic jam is now a blessing because I get to listen to this podcast. So so now that you have the neuroplasticity, the new neural pathways, the empty brain, now you're able to have a different perspective on everything. And I'm going to repeat them. Living in the moment. Is it a burden? Is it a burden or is it a blessing? I thought I had one more. Yeah. And also, let me tell you how I start my day. So you remember when I told you getting out of bed was my biggest challenge. For some reason, and I haven't figured out why, mornings are my most difficult part. So even now, as I'm progressing through my journey, which is never ending, as I'm progressing through my journey, I have the hardest time with all of these tools and all of these things in the morning. When I wake up, most days I'm kind of foul. And so I wake up, I'll tell you what I did this morning. And I'll tell you what I did yesterday. I wake up, I grab my cup of coffee because that helps. If you think ketamine-assisted, coffee helps. So I know myself. So I come downstairs where it's quiet and I'm in my little man cave or whatever. And then I put on some like meditation type of music. And I take a couple of sips of coffee just so it can help me get in a better mood. Mm-hmm. And then before I talk to anyone, before I do anything to mess up the day, because if I just wake up and start talking, I'm going to ruin the day. So I come down and I say, okay. And the first thing I do is I get really, really quiet and I don't think. And I say, okay, what thoughts are entering my mind automatically? You got this bill, you got to do this, do that, blah, blah. All right. That's what's on your mind. All right. How do you feel about that? Okay. You can deal with that, right? Sure, I can deal with that. And then once I let the natural thoughts come into my mind, I don't let them, and I say, does that cause emotion? Yes. That made my chest tight. That made my stomach rumble. Well, what is that? Because you curiosity, right? Well, why is that? Why does that thought cause this physiological reaction. All right, well, because that's very stressful. That was something I've dealt with because I don't know how to deal with this. Because the unknown, even though 90% of the things we stress about never happen, I'm still allowing this to affect me. Okay, so I deal with this. I let things that are naturally coming into my mind. I say, what feeling do you have about it? What is your connection? Why is this happening? What do you want to do about it? Then I work through that. Then after I work through that, I say, okay. And before I do that, I do some deep breathing, right? I do the box breathing. I do all the therapeutic breathing, and I'm breathing through it all. Anytime I get that anxious feeling, I breathe through it. And then I have this ointment that's called heart chakra. It's an ointment that I got at the healing store. So I put that on my pulses. I put on my radial pulse, my carotid pulse, and then right on my heart. And then I lay back and I stretch my back open. I hold my arms out and I open up my chest. And I'm symbolically opening up my heart chakra to not only receive all the love that's out there, but it's like a trampoline too. So once the love comes in and then it bounces back out. So I physically make the motion to open up my heart chakra, do my deep breathing, get my mind right, get into my mindset, and then start thinking, what are you grateful for? I'm grateful for ABC. I'm grateful for blah, blah, blah. I'm grateful for that. Okay, I go through all that. How do you want your day to look? Yes. Okay, do some more deep breathing. And then when I'm ready, then I go upstairs. And and the thing is when I don't, people always talk about awareness, right? Awareness. We're seeking awareness, but you hear these terms and they don't really mean anything. Well, the awareness means to me, and why it's so important in the healing process is because I want to be in a state where I'm constantly aware of how I am, who I am, how I feel, what affects me. So because I know that I wake up in a funk, I'm aware of that. So what am I going to do about it? I go downstairs, I fix my funk, and I go back upstairs and live in society. Now, anyone who knows me, who hears this, knows that I'm not 100%. But you only have to be 51% and trending.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying do I fail? Probably more than I succeed. Am I working on it? Am I trying? Do I need to be constantly reminded? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So the days that I'm reminded, so that's what awareness is. Why does this person make you feel this emotion? Why does this situation make you feel this emotion? Why do you shut down on this occasion? Why did you have this dream? Why do you have this thought? So awareness is I'm aware of it. And now that I'm aware of it, well, what do you want to do about it? Well, because of the journey, you're not afraid to look deep inside yourself. You're not afraid to face yourself. You're not afraid to go inside, be vulnerable, be uncomfortable, be scared, be hurt, and say, this is what's happening, Mr. Major. And you need to figure out the why, figure out how to work on it, figure out if it's important enough for you, or do you want to discard it? Mm-hmm. Excuse me. So that's to me what awareness is. Yeah. So all of this work towards awareness. Well, that's a long answer. Let me check my notes. I've never been short on words.
No. This is a perfect place for that.
And so my daughter the other day goes, man, you've been taking a lot of like deep breaths lately. I was like, oh, yeah, because I was struggling that day. So I'm doing the therapeutic breathing throughout the day. Yeah. And for me, you got to know yourself, right? Awareness. I know I have to go outside. Yep. I have to go outside all the time. I got to keep moving. So how do you keep moving, Mike? Well, I joined the gym. I bought a bike. Why did I buy a bike? It's exercise. It gets me moving. It's outside and it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I bought a bicycle. So you can't just sit around and say, I want, without action. You have to make things happen.
Right.
Whether you plan a date night, go on vacation, whatever, you got to make things happen. But and again, full disclaimer, I know what needs to be done. Doesn't mean I'm doing it. Just everybody just calm down.
I think we're all there with you, so
Yeah.
you're not alone. But I love this. I love how you brought this up because the first step, and I think for so long, so many of us have operated in full shutdown that to even wrap your mind around checking in and doing that practice of talking to parts or looking at emotions and being curious, it's like I don't even many people are at step one where it's like first we have to get out of full shutdown.
Right.
And it is a process of unwinding and working through a lot of that stuff, but it does take a daily check-in and a daily opening of that heart chakra where real love and compassion comes from, not
Right.
out of the ego chakras of this is about me or judgment and all kinds of things that come from that place. But it really is becoming aware of the first step. And you mentioned others around you noticing like, oh, you're breathing. Like, yeah, because you're regulating your nervous system and it's
Right.
obviously impacting their nervous system, which is so cool. Like it's not just about us. Like this is the work is not just about us as individuals. Like
Right.
it's all about the collective and the experience. And so I like that you brought that up. I'm wondering what are like when you know it's a rough day. I don't like using the word bad
Right.
ever usually,
Challenging.
but challenging, difficult, an off day. Like what do you do when you recognize it? And what do you do with that?
Well, what I've done mostly is what's easiest. I don't, I was sitting here trying to think, why is the wrong thing the easiest thing to do?
Hmm.
I guess because it doesn't take effort. But on those days, if I can't pull it together, I leave. I go do something. I wouldn't say bail, but sometimes I have a discussion with myself. It's like, man, you just can't seem to get it together right now, and all you're going to do is hurt someone.
Mm.
You're going to just take it out on your loved ones. You're going to say something you regret. And sometimes I got to maybe go on a bike ride or go on a hunt or go fishing or drive around. And I don't think it's avoidance. I think at some point you're like, you got to weigh it out. Like if I stay, I just can't overcome this. So I got to go to the gym or I got to do something where I can work it out and then come back and be a contributing member of society. So for me, a lot of times I have to just leave for a little bit. It would be nice if I could just stay in the company that I'm in. But sometimes it's when I feel that overwhelming feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That's the feeling that I never want to feel is being but I do feel it often.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go back and say, all right, what are you feeling overwhelmed about? Let me see. I don't have a job. I did retire early. I still like to do a lot of things. I'm hemorrhaging money. Kids are getting older. So and so is doing this. And then it just starts to pile on, right? Then you feel this uncomfortable insecurity feeling. And then your spouse has listed 3 or 4 things that need to be done. And then it starts piling on, right? And you start feeling crushed. I'm feeling crushed. I got to go. But a lot of times I have to just take a time out.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually come downstairs in the middle of the day and meditated or come downstairs and breathe. But for me, I need to be. Sometimes I just go and I sit on the park bench and feel the sun and try to work through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I can tell you what I used to do. I used to look around and see if I had any leftover Norco or Percocet, or uh, a lot of people maybe drink, whatever. But I used to try to just kind of numb it.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be either I don't I haven't drank in a long time, but I back in the day I used to drink. But I don't know. Alcohol is not my drug. Food is my drug.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times when I stopped drinking alcohol, but on certain days I will try to eat myself to death. So it could be food, or it could be binge watching something, or back in the day it used to be maybe pills if I had them available. If I go to the dentist or the doctor and they give me 30 Percocet and I only need 2, I don't give the 28 back.
Right. Yeah.
I take them, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I take them when I'm having a stressful evening. But
Mm-hmm.
now I drink yogi stress tea instead.
Nice.
But now I have a healthy alternative that works. So replace that. But yeah, I don't like those days, and it would be nice to not have them. And it would be nice to be able to navigate without having to take a timeout. But I
Yeah.
think a timeout is more important than hurting someone.
Or, I mean, hurting yourself really because it's so interesting when we look at the protective outputs of the nervous system, because that whole idea, it falls, which we'll talk about that more coming up, but it's under the flight response, is this living in this constant state of threat. So when you talk about like these 50 things of like all these to-do list things and the stressors and realities facing you, those all feel like threats. And so the nervous system is like, holy crap, like we got to do something. Like this doesn't feel good. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it sends us straight into those protective behaviors, which if you took any of them, it could be binge eating, purging, substance use,
Mm-hmm.
excessive spending, gambling, like dangerous relationships, whatever they look like. That's all us looking for some sense of control within the chaos of what's happening around us. And
Right,
it's really a maladaptive behavior that's shown up. But it's the hard part is like it's a temporary fix. It's
right,
that quick dopamine, like,
right,
oh, like, yeah, that feels so much better to check out, moves us into that freeze state. But that's all it is us looking for control.
right. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Well, and you mentioned too, which is very like counter what we're taught or counter culture, is to show up for yourself first before you show up for other people. Like
Right,
we're very much taught to, well, you gotta like put others before yourself
right,
all the time and take care of them. But it's like by you actually taking your tactical time out, you're coming back and showing up in a regulated state and with so much more capacity, is like,
right,
been doing this wrong all along, like thinking that we're doing so good by showing up for people, but we're really hurting those around us, like you
right,
said.
right. Yeah, you're there physically.
Hmm.
And I hope people go back and listen to, because the regulated state is, I hope people really dive into what that really means, what the regulated state, and because that's what we want to be in that state all the time. But we also have to learn how to get there. And yeah, tactical timeout could setting the stage, or setting up your morning, or a tactical timeout. Yeah, th- those may be your tools. Like I said, maybe even because of going on a bike ride or whatever, people run, people whatever. That's so healthy. I mean, that's like it's so healthy because you're releasing those chemicals that need to be released. You're getting a chance to think and get your mind right. There's just no downside to it.
Right.
And the breathing, people they hear you talk about breathing, But until you've done it, you don't understand how much because that's a quick fix. When you learn how to do therapeutic breathing, it works instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope people really get into learning all of the tools for navigating through these stressors.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
Because
the
that's what,
nervous system gives us immediate feedback. Immediate.
yes, right.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, actually, there's so many people who they have no idea where to begin. They're so overwhelmed. They're so crushed. They have no idea how to lift that rocket ship up through 6 miles of gravity into the atmosphere. They've got all of the forces of gravity pushing them down. They don't know. They have no idea where to begin because they're so overwhelmed. They're so helpless. They're so hopeless. And they really, they're like, what is the point? Like, why? Or, and I don't, well, we're real. I'm not saying I wasn't suicidal. I just didn't really have a desire to live. And there's a difference. But a lot of people think that people who commit suicide want to die. A lot of people who commit suicide don't necessarily want to die. They just don't want to live in their current state anymore.
Right.
And that's a big difference. They want to live. They just don't want to live the way they're living. So when they feel hopeless and helpless and see no way out and they're overwhelmed, well, then it's like, that's the next step. But there's so many people who have no idea how or where to even begin.
Yeah. So what if you were encouraging someone, what would be the first step, or what would be your recommendation towards the first step?
Reach out. And it's hard, it's tricky because there are some traditionalists that are right for certain people. So I would say reach out, and not necessarily to a family member. Reach out to a therapist, reach out and keep reaching out to the one that fits for you. Like you mentioned in your last one, the person that said, I think you have PTSD. That person may not be the person for you.
Right.
So like when my wife and I went to a marriage counselor, there are many marriage counselors, but some of them you can't relate to.
Mm-hmm.
But the one that we went to dealt with our demographic and the way we were raised. So she was a fit for us, but she's not a fit for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the first thing to do is, and there's many ways to do it, reach out and talk to a therapist who can guide you in the right direction. Because a lot of times, because I didn't know anything about therapy, nothing, never even thought about it. Because my daughter said, you are the last person I thought would ever do ketamine. And she's like, and she said, I just can't believe it because that's what they know of me.
Right.
So I would say definitely reach out. And if it's not the right person for you, they can maybe guide you, or you can keep, and I try to get the word out, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I think you and I and the people that we know have to be advocates and spokespersons, and we need to get we just need to spread the word. We need to just keep telling people there's a better way, a healthy alternative, a better alternative. But yeah, maybe seek out, and maybe the more people you tell, maybe that person can help you, because it's not like I sought this. I remember sitting at Station 2 probably 12 years ago. I'm sitting there at the desk, and there was another person across from me. And I said, hey, man. I said, what's up, buddy? I said, I'm angry every moment of my life, and I can't shake it. I said, it's just this deep-seated anger just won't go away. And he said, have you ever talked to anybody about it? And in my head, I said, well, I'm talking to you.
Duh.
But they were like, right?
Uh-huh.
They were like, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not their fault because they did. But he said, have you ever talked to anybody? And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, why would I do that? They can't help me.
Mm.
But that's what I was taught.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we got to change the narrative. But yeah, you're just gonna have to reach out and pray to the universe. I don't know. Everybody has their different beliefs, right? Some people call it God. Some people call it the universe. Some people call it whatever. But you have got to put it out there. You have got to put it out into the universe.
Yeah.
That because if you don't know where to go, who to seek, what to do, just put it out in the universe and see if the universe gives you the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Would be my advice.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think you're right. People can get in a spot where they just don't know, they don't even know where to start.
Right.
And it can be the process can be very overwhelming, and the paperwork and trying things out. But yeah, you are so important to invest in yourself.
Right.
And the funny thing is we would do this. It would be no question if someone asked us, It's like, oh
Right.
yeah, like we will absolutely help walk you through this. Like
Right.
I'll do anything. But when it comes to ourselves, it's again that nature of not
Right.
making ourselves a priority
Right.
or valuing like who we are. And so we have to keep trying and keep, even if the therapist isn't right, like try a different one,
Right.
like try a different modality, try something else. There's so many different things out there now that's so cool and to offer. And there's so many resources available too. Like I know financially it can be difficult for people as well, but I know like here in Colorado, we're blessed to have the grant for active firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
The police, like it's hard. Like it is very hard. That's one of my goals is like, how do we make this better for people? Because there's money out there, but just finding the way to get to it and to use it is
Right.
difficult. And insurance isn't always helpful either. But there are things in place like the grant, which works very well. But also like there's a lot of ways and connections and things you can get directed that money is not the issue. So I think people have to get out of their own way a lot of the time too. And whether it's schedule or money or
Yeah.
support at home, whatever that looks like is you have to get out of your own way if you really want to heal and transform things in your life.
Right.
Or you can live in the dysfunctional status quo of what you've got going on and, take that road. But
And money does come up. It's interesting that it does come up because we do spend a lot of money on other things.
yeah.
We spend a lot of money on motorcycles and firearms and trips and boats and campers and furniture, whatever. We do spend a lot of money on a new TV. And so it is interesting that we bulk or bulk, I guess is the right word, at that. But yeah, but it could be there's some sticker shock to tell someone, oh yeah, you need about 7 sessions and it's this month, and then they do the math, they're like, holy crap. Or you need to get the days off, and it's like, But perhaps it also goes to how bad do you want? Like, what state are you in? Are you in a state of desperation? Is this more important than anything else?
Right.
Because without it, because what good is anything else? You're going to end up dying. So we might as well. I mean, a lot of us really didn't have much choice.
No, and it's a pilgrimage. Like the more you put into your own process and your own journey, the more you're going to get out of it. And you can't just, again, like come in with a mentality that someone else is going to fix everything for you or a medicine's going to fix everything for you. That's not how that works.
And you also have to be okay with what we used to call backsliding, or yeah, you also have to be okay with knowing that on your journey, to me, it's like, you're trying to run up a muddy hill. You're trying to run up a muddy hill in the beginning, and you're wearing tennis shoes, and you're working. You're not going anywhere. And then the ketamine is, oh, hey, here's a pair of cleats. All right, with these cleats, I can now start going up this hill. But every now and then, I'm going to hit a muddy spot and slide back down. I still have on the cleats that allow me to climb this hill. They're not like the tennis shoes where I was not going anywhere but down. But the ketamine is the cleats. I'm going up this. Oh my God! I hit a muddy patch and I slid down 5 feet. Well, that doesn't mean you have to continue going all the way down to the bottom. That just means, all right, I need to work a little harder to go over this muddy patch, but I'm still ascending upward. And I think a lot of people think that I'm going to be healed and it's over. No, you're going to have days where life sucks. You're going to have days where you wake up in an absolute funk. You're going to have things when your spouse says something to you and your response is 100% inappropriate. You're going to have a situation where somebody cuts you off in traffic and you call them and you just wasted all of this energy screaming and yelling at a person who can't hear you instead of saying, that's unfortunate. I hope they find peace. You're going to have a point where you're standing in line and the grocery line is long and you're all pissed off when you're standing in one of a gazillion fresh food, organic grocery stores, which there's another one a block away, and you're privileged to be able to walk to an organic grocery store and purchase the best food in the world at this store when there's people starving all over the world and you're pissed off because 3 people are in front of the line with it. So you're going to have those days where you lose perspective. You're going to have those days where you just can't shake the funk. You're going to have days where you regress in your growth. But that doesn't mean that you have to continue on that slide. It's like, check yourself. Hey, you're going the wrong way. You're going the wrong way, buddy. Take a time out and let's get back on track. Mm-hmm. But don't be unrealistic thinking, I've arrived, all is bliss. Nah, man. You're going to wake up the same old funky you some days. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important.
No, I absolutely agree. Like, we ebb and flow with life, and life is harder in seasons, and our buckets still get full, and you still have to empty your bucket. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. What do you think about the need for community around, or what has community looked like for you in your journey so far?
It's interesting you bring that up because during my meditation this morning, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about community this morning because I was like, hey, Mike, are you ready for the next step? And I was like, yeah, maybe. Well, what is that next step? Well, I think the next step, because there's been so much self-improvement, self-love, self-survival, new growth. Well, now maybe it's time to reach out. And it's difficult for a person who has a lifelong of isolation. So when you lived your life in isolation, and then now you talk about community, because I was that guy that if you invite me to something, there's a high probability I'm not coming. So on my days off, I wasn't the one that was at the parties. I wasn't the one that was at the weddings and the get-togethers and whatever. I was happiest being alone. So you have these years of isolation and just relishing in isolation. Like, isolation is life and you're loving it. And the last thing you want to do is be around people when you're off duty. So now you're talking about community. Well, community is not first, in my opinion. The journey, using my words carefully, the journey to self healing is first. And then you get to a point where, okay, I'm far enough along in my journey where now I can reach out and be a part of a community. It has to go in that step, in my opinion. And then, so for me, a community, it's small. It's small for one, but it has to be like-minded people who have a shared interest, but are also positive.
Mm.
So, as you know, you already know, for me, I have a hunting community. And that hunting community is small, but we're not like trophy hunters and going to Africa and killing Cecil the lion. We honor the universe for providing food for you're giving your life so that I may have life. And it's a very spiritual, ethical thing.
Right.
So if you're not a part of that, then you're not in my hunting community. And then of course you have the community of your family, like Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving, Thanksgiving, things like that. But I'd say the most important part of community is it shouldn't be first. Because if you're not on the journey for self-healing, you're not going to be a positive contributor of community, nor are you going to welcome it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working, that's the phase I'm at now, is trying to connect with other people and other communities. That's where I am right now. But
Yeah.
this is like day one.
Literally.
I'm going to lean back a little bit.
No, I like that. I think that is such a good way of explaining it, because if you do come in to your journey in the immediate seeking of community, almost feels like a crutch, or like I want someone else to do the work for me,
Right.
whether that's community or the therapist or coach or whatever. I want someone else to do the work for me, and that it doesn't work that way. But it is so important, I think, to tap in when your journey calls for it, to tap into community.
Right.
Especially sometimes with using alternative methods, things like psychedelic assisted therapy. It is essential for continued integration to happen.
Right.
Really, it never stops. So community becomes another arm of that integration piece, where you're using that people like-minded and in the
Right.
growth mindset,
Right.
healing mindset, that can help you continue to integrate throughout your life.
And it could be the wrong community. What if you start with community first? It could be a codependent.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't want a community of crackheads, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. You're going to pick up and be like the people you're around. So you got to choose who you want to emanate and be like, for sure. So. Well, I have a couple of fun questions to kind of wrap things up for you. So curious to know, what book are you currently reading?
It is. I bought it yesterday, and it is in my backpack. I think it's called The Circle of Fire
Okay.
by Don Miguel Ruiz. The same guy that wrote The Four Agreements.
Oh, yes.
It's
Okay.
it's he and his son are writers. It's one of those. My next book will be The Fifth Agreement, but I think it's called The Circle of Fire. I could be wrong, because like I said, I just bought it, threw it in my backpack, and haven't looked at it yet. But you already know that I'm into Toltec wisdom, and so I have the whole series of his books, but I didn't have that one.
Okay.
And my daughter sent me a picture and said, "Hey, did you know there's another book?" I was like, "No." So I went to Five and Below, and they had it.
Nice.
I didn't know Five and Below had books, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
I didn't either. Okay, cool. Um, right now, what's your favorite self-care practice?
definitely, definitely the morning meditation and bike riding or going to the gym.
Nice. Okay.
and hunting.
Yeah, I was like, it's hunting season. I figured
Ask me
that's gonna come up.
this in February, but right now it's hunting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get out in the woods and I'm where I need to. I'm at home.
Yeah.
So during hunting season, it's hunting. Before that, but when it was not hunting season, it was going on long bike rides with my music, uh, and going on a cruise in a week.
Yeah. Nice.
So Antoinette and I are going to Bahamas, Jamaica, and Cayman on a ship, just the two of us. So that's a time to connect and be in the
Yes.
moment and just, yeah.
Yeah. I know we're gonna have to do a part two. We didn't even get to dive into relationship stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. No worries.
We'll have to do part two.
Yeah.
Being that Thanksgiving is coming up, what's the food that you're most excited to have?
Well, I am a carb freak. I'm a carbaholic. So it's funny because like you'll see a lot of like even if you go to a barbecue restaurant, you'll see people who get so excited over like the ribs or the brisket. Man, I'm looking at the sides, man. So I'm talking about cornbread. I'm talking about some people call it stuffing, some people call it dressing, and the
Mhm.
different types of dressing. Like you got cornbread dressing, you got Georgia Boys has a brisket dressing.
Whoa.
Probably not gluten free, but
Ugh.
will survive. So yeah, I'm talking about macaroni and cheese. I'm talking about garlic smash taters. I'm talking about different types of dressing. I get more excited about sides than meat.
Mm.
I'm a carbaholic, and Lord help me.
Ugh, it's gonna be good.
Oh,
Do you guys make mac and cheese for Thanksgiving? Is that a staple?
my daughter does. My daughter is
Mm.
allergic to dairy, so she makes a gluten-free, non-dairy mac and cheese.
Nice.
That's good.
Yeah. Oh, I can't. I'm excited. Um, yeah, we're all with you. We all like carbs.
Oh, dude.
Oh. Um, okay. And then one piece of advice you would leave everybody with today.
So the people the people that I'm talking to with the advice, are they in a state of crisis or are they on a journey? Are they at the beginning where they're overwhelmed and in crisis, or are they on a journey? Because I
Um, I mean, I'm thinking of this as like a swirled ice cream cone because I feel like it's
yeah,
kind of all like even in being in crisis is still a part of your experience and your journey. So maybe a bit of both if you can offer.
I would say the most important thing is to be open. Just be open to new ideas. Be open to new ways of doing things. Realize that everything you've been taught your entire life is a lie. and you, so don't so just because somebody told you something means one thing, I mentioned this in our Monday group. I said, just because someone said something doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean if it's a parent, a spouse, an older sibling, a preacher, a politician, it doesn't matter. Just because someone says something doesn't make it true. So all your life, if you've been told you're a certain way, it doesn't mean it's true. If somebody said psychedelics are bad, that doesn't make it true. These same people have Percocet in their cabinet, and they have a shoebox full of medications that the doctor said is okay. So just because, don't listen to outsiders. Don't listen to everything you've been told your whole life because we have been taught wrong. So have enough courage to have your own mind and be open to new ideas, a new way of living, a new way of thinking, a new perspective, a new way of life. Just be open. If somebody's like, yeah, I microdose, well, then try it. don't just be open to it, or at least open to investigate it. Or someone, just anything that you maybe never considered or grew up with. Just be open to new ideas and get the thoughts of your past out of your head.
Mm.
Your teachers were taught wrong. They had good hearts. They had good intentions, no ill will, no evil or bad intent. They just didn't know any better. It's like when you go to the medical doctor. The medical doctor was taught this Western medicine in this college or university, and that's all they know. You have this is how we treat it. They don't know any better, but in their mind and their heart, they're doing the right thing. They're just wrong. And it's okay to say, what I learned was wrong. It doesn't mean the person is bad. The person is wrong. They did their best. They did all that they knew how to do. But it's time that I rethink and relearn things. So just be open to that.
Nice. That was like a good mic drop to end everything. Literally.
Mike Major drop. Yeah, I still have an hour of sunshine to catch. Well, yeah. I tell you what, you're talking about a challenge, man. When it's dark by 5 o'clock.
I know. It does make it very hard.
Oh, yep. I've been getting up at even if I don't have anything scheduled, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I want to maximize every minute of sunlight.
Yeah.
Oh my God. How do you not have, what is it? SAD, seasonal something?
Yeah. Seasonal depression.
Disorder. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Your day's over at 5.
I know.
All right, anyway.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree with you. Well, truly an honor and so special to have you here and on. I'm super excited. Like I said, we'll have to do another one talking about relationships and stuff like that. But thank you so much for taking the time. And if hopefully people hear all of the things that you shared and it speaks to some part of them and gives them the courage to reach out or to show up and start their journey, whatever that looks like. So,
all right. Well, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
and it's an honor. It's an honor and a privilege.
Yeah. So, well, we'll keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
All right. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Sit Around the Fire. We're excited to keep the conversation and connection going. I invite you to check out our website, link in the description below. Also, don't wait to get signed up for the upcoming workshop, Strengthening Bonds, working on efficient communication between first responders and their partners. You can sign up for this via the website or the link in the description in the notes. We look forward to sitting around the fire again with you very soon.